So let's jump in, and I want to start with the big picture. How unsafe is America right now as compared to 2018 when you wrote, for example, The Plot to Destroy America, to Destroy Democracy, or your 2020 book, The Plot to Destroy America? And has your own alarm intensified?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, speaking as I can always speak as an American citizen, as a person who was born and raised in Philadelphia, where the American experiment started, and I can speak as an intelligence professional. I'm going to merge those two together. We are in mortal danger, and I don't say that lightly. I have never ever in my entire life delved in conspiracy theory. I can only discuss and show to you the empirical facts as they exist. This nation is in great grave danger. Certainly now I'm going to speak as a Philadelphian, right? I was just out in front of Independence Hall a couple of days ago reading the Declaration of Independence for National Security Leaders for America. And as you read that letter of indictment against King George III, you just realize this is exactly what's happening with the presidency today. Right? The only thing he hasn't done is quarter troops in our houses at our own expense. Everything else has happened, right?
Yeah.
Suspending, full-scale plot to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. That preceded the Magna Carta, right? And we have a man who is full-blown dictatorship. And his biggest problem is that there are people around him that tell him you have to go through the courts, you have to go through the motions. I think at some point very soon, perhaps just before this election or just after this election, if he has a bad event, I really think that he is just going to go full-blown dictator. Funny story before we go to the next part. In 2017, I wrote a story for a television show. I used to be a consultant at Warner Brothers. And it was about a presidency that had collapsed, had gone away. A joint government comes together, one Republican, one Democrat, president, vice president, America Kumbaya. And the Speaker of the House is the son of this man. And they kill the president. They disable the vice president. The Speaker of the House takes over and just decides enough of this law stuff, right? We're going to go to full-blown dictatorship, and is working with Moscow to create their own group to hunt down, liberals and others. Hollywood wouldn't touch it, and there's a reason. Here's what one of the phrases was. It's being overtaken by events.
I was going to say that maybe they thought it was far-fetched, but in fact, they're aware of where this is going. And then, by the way, I mean, I think, you like me were people who could go back years. We could look at, the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. We could look at the effort that was underway to undermine the liberal democracy, and who were interested in putting in place a unitary executive, somebody who would have maximum power, something that was, I would suggest made maybe absolutely certain once the Supreme Court's 2024 immunity ruling let him know he was going to be able to get away with just about anything. So here we are.
And we should stop using that phrase, unitary executive. We should start using the proper phrase, dictator.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Dictator. We couch these phrases in political ideologies and philosophies that people bring up. I've spent my entire life fighting warlords, dictators, junior potentates, and authoritarians of every stripe, and defending them, right? Most people don't realize the war on terrorism was the United States not only defending Islam, but defending kingdoms and emirates, right? An emirate is a principality. That's what the word literally means, principality. And we love those when they're on our side. But, now we have a president of the United States who for the first time realizes if he was pushed, he could have all the powers that Franklin Roosevelt had during World War II. And he's just started that, right? He wants to, changed Singer sewing machine to making ballistic missiles, or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
right? The way Remington Rand used to make typewriters, and then they
Well,
were
then
making
we would
rifles.
argue that it was for the purpose of the arsenal of democracy, right? It was really
Right.
needed
Yeah, we had
rather than our current situation.
very, very true. But this person's problem is his sustainment of himself as a malignant narcissist. And I took part in a movie about Trump, right? About Trump's psychopathy. As a malignant narcissist, his only concern is not hearing about himself, not seeing himself placed on a pedestal. And he's now seeing, according to this book, Regime Change, he's seeing his own mortality. He's going through some advanced chemical treatments that other people aren't getting. So now he's like, I saw John Aravosis, I think yesterday, said he was driving around the circle at Memorial, at the Arlington Cemetery to look at where his arch is going to be built. And he wants it built like within a year. He wants to see this before his death.
Right.
But that makes him more motivated to be hysterical and unconventional and murderous.
Yeah, and I take your point about a dictator or dictatorship, and I use a phrase like unitary executive because that was the political scientific professionals who were using that kind of language to sort of argue how they were going to go about dismantling our government, dismantling liberal democracy, maximizing their power, let me offer you in this second question some specifics, and I'm thinking about this dismantling. In the last weeks, Trump's installed the utterly unfit Bill Pulte at the DNI. He immediately started firing people, even after Tulsi Gabbard had cut the DNI by 40%. Not only have thousands been cut by the CIA and the FBI, there have been ongoing attacks on NATO and the destruction of our relationships with European allies. We've seen Hegseth stripping away top military officers with deep expertise. How much and why has Trump accelerated his dismantling of the U.S. security structures in this second term?
Well, like all good third world dictators, and that's where he's pushing us, right, down to the third world. All good third world dictators want control of the intelligence apparatus for the sole purpose of hunting their political and personal enemies. Mm-hmm. They don't care about external intelligence. They don't care about, foreign threats unless it's to the regime itself, right? So, I mean, my entire career, I worked in collections for principally the National Security Agency, and I don't recall seeing many activities related to Iraqi external intelligence because all of Iraqi external intelligence was oriented towards their enemies. Now, I worked on Libyan intelligence missions where they were carrying out acts of terrorism, but most of the activity was assassinating Libyan dissidents in other countries, and that's where Trump wants. He has set Pulte in to be the guy who delves into what he thinks is the deep state, the intelligence world, and uses them to come up with a solution. Tulsi Gabbard was doing that. Now, on the other hand, there is a plus side to this. I have never been a big fan of the Directorate of National Intelligence. First off, full disclosure, I am fully qualified to be the Director of National Intelligence.
Well, surely more than Bill Pulte.
Yeah, it requires career intelligence professional to fill that role. It doesn't say anything about management skills or managing money. If somebody would come up and say, Malcolm, we want you as Director of National Intelligence, I go, yeah, no problem. I'll take that job. I'll restore it back to what it is. This guy's not there to do that. He is there to dismantle it. And first thing he's going to do, he's going to fire all the professionals. Yeah. You saw that he was bringing on as a deputy a person, is it Julie Cross, I think the name is, who is a
Norton.
Is it Martin?
Norton.
Okay, sorry. Who is brought on as a conspiracy theorist about the 2020 election. Right. So that agency is being turned into essentially Saddam's Mukhabarat, right? And without the executions. He has ICE for that. Yeah, and they are going to go down in there and they are going to find or manufacture evidence. Now, here's the best part about that, good news about that. People who are true intelligence professionals can stop all of that. Just stop it. Here's how they're going to stop it. All right. They're going to be given a set of orders and they're going to go to the cafeteria. They're going to have coffee and they're going to come back and they're just not going to do it. And they're going to go morning meeting the next day. What's the status on that 2020 election? We're going to go, they're going to read it. They're going to go, yeah, we don't have anything on that. Because when you're talking the National Security Agency, pardon my, I tell everybody this. I worked at NSA. I worked for NSA 20 years. The most loyal, constitutionally loyal agency in the United States government. They won't do nothing. All that stuff Edward Snowden said we were doing, they wouldn't do that. They don't do that. That's why they have to create, these lackeys to come out and do it. Even the CIA will drag their feet for 30 years, right? And then they'll come up with a finding saying everything that you wanted wasn't real. So there won't be any monitoring.
Why the dismantling has to happen, that the more of those people they can remove, then the more there's not going to be that pushback, the bulwark.
Yeah, well, I think it's great because empty desks can't be manipulated. Right? All you can do is say, hey, I'm firing these guys. And then you say, I want to create a special monitoring team for liberals. Okay, you got to get equipment for that, bro. And you got to have operators that will sit and listen to that. Now, it's not so hard in the United States, right? English linguist. So, that kind of collection. But you're going to have to justify the application, their budgets. You're going to have to justify their pay scale. You're going to have to justify their collection orientation, which means whatever satellite, a radio or telephone relay, those numbers are going to come up. And if they all come up as the Democrats in the House and the Senate, you've just sentenced yourself to prison for the rest of your life because it will come out. And I'll tell you how it'll come out. It'll be some mid-level guy who's like me, who's got 10 years at Fort Meade or is over at the FBI, was tasked out, secondary guy from the military is tasked out. And he's going to go, I've been monitoring the phone calls of every Democratic congressman and senator and Jesse Jackson, or not Jesse Jackson, who's now passed, but, Barack Obama and all these guys. And they're going to drop the entire package of collection, like we like to joke at NSA, off a truck in front of the New York Times, right? Off a pallet will drop in front of the New York Times. And it'll be, I didn't do it. And what they'll do is they'll go over to someone else's computer they don't like, and they'll pull all that information off of them and frame them. The point is that we won't do this lightly. We won't do it. You're not a threat to the Constitution. You're not a threat to the people of the United States. It's a violation of the law. There are middle-level people that will start the ball rolling, and as they start going to their judge advocate generals, they'll come out and they'll say, we're not going to do that.
So let's count on the middle-level people to stick around and pay attention.
Well, NSA is even the highest level people. You could put Stephen Miller at the top of that agency. Every door, I want to assure everybody. I worked for the Fort for 20 years. And my memoir's coming out this year, which NSA cleared enormous amounts of data that I didn't think would ever get cleared. They are just a loyal organization, and they are the real heroes in the United States because director of NSA is a military officer. Deputy director is a career civilian. Even if you take those two guys and you put in two total lackeys in, every door in Fort Meade has its own cipher lock. If you are not cleared to go into that door and read into that program and watch them at work, you won't know what's happening. So if you come in and you say, hey, English language collection, Democratic Party, I'll be like, yeah, man, all right, whatever. And they'll come back and they'll say, what do you got? And I go, yeah, we've been rolling cast iron on them. We've been rolling 24/7 on them. They don't use their phones. And if you try using a computer, go ahead, use a computer. Computer will compromise you faster than a human ever will. And all the evidence will be laid out for your 20-year, 30-year prison sentence when the government inevitably changes.